Thank you for staying tuned today. Sit back. You're in for a fascinating testimony. I'm privileged to interview many people, but I've never heard a testimony like the one you're going to hear in just a moment. Jackie Carpenter has joined me here on the set. Jackie, good to see you all the way from Georgia.
Oh, yeah.
And as you can see, I have your books here. They're all marked up. I put them in the right order. The Bridge, and then
Georgia Justice.
Journey to Faith. And these books are about to turn into a major motion picture.
They are. It is just incredible what God is doing.
But you know what I'm going to do? Normally when I have a guest ask you about your own story, how you came to the Lord and all, but you know what? There's so much here. I'm going to jump right into it.
Do
okay?
it.
Because
jump. Yeah, there's a lot.
Your life changed on June 27, 2008. Tell us what happened.
Let me tell you, first of all, my life was perfect in every aspect. I mean, life couldn't have been better, Peter. I mean, and I say that in regards to, I had nothing keeping me awake at night. I slept good. Life was good. My husband and I traveling. But, you know, I realized real fast how fast life can go from great to bad, you know, and it just hit me so fast. My son, I have two sons. My oldest son is my pastor, and my youngest son had been called into the ministry, but he was also a home builder, and still is. He had a subdivision going with 8 houses, and in Georgia, copper theft is a big thing, and that's where they will go into under construction places and they will rip out the copper lining, refrigerators, heat and air, and they sell this copper probably for no more than $50. But the damage they leave behind was like $6,000. Well, Jason had been robbed 17 times, so you can just imagine, figure it up. But this all happened the week of June 27th, in these 8 houses, he'd already been robbed 3 times in this 1 week. This, Peter, was the first time that law enforcement actually came onto the scene. And a young deputy met my son at the construction site of the next house with exposed copper, just to give him advice, really. But what advice? What he told my son was right. He said, Jason, we do not have manpower to guard your houses 24 hours a day. He's right, they don't. And he said, you've got to do that to catch copper thieves. But he said, let me tell you what you can do. He said, you can hide in the woods, watch this house, the next one with exposed copper, you can watch this house. If they come back, you call 911, and what I can do is I can alert the authorities you're doing this. They will know you're in those woods, and I can have them patrolling the area, and they can be here in a matter of minutes. Well, you know, Peter, I didn't want my son doing this, but I thought, how bad could that be? I mean, you know, he was only going to do it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Monday, he had already hired full-time security to come and take over until they could get these houses dried in. But Jason is a perfectionist, and he did go on to ask him questions. Well, what if this happens, or what if that happens? He went on to tell Jason, well, you know, let me tell you, you are allowed to, if something happened and they tried to get away before the police could get here or whatever, you are allowed to hold them at gunpoint. You are allowed to make what is called a citizen's arrest.
Yeah.
Okay, now let me tell you something, Peter. Had I thought it were ever going to come to that, I would have been there. No, he wouldn't have been there. But he was sitting out there, and at 1 o'clock, lo and behold, in the morning, pitch black, this white van drives up, and it pulls in to this house, and the way it pulls in, the headlights are directly on him in the woods. He just knew they saw him. And he fell off this little bucket he was sitting on, and he got to his cell phone, and he's whispering in the 911 calls, and he says, send the police, I'm being robbed. Tell them, send the police. He hung up, and he immediately called his father-in-law, who knew he was out there too, and was worried about him. And he said, Billy, they're back. And he said, do you need me to come over there? He said, I'm scared. And he was scared to death. He even told 911 not to call him back. His phone could not ring because he was that close. Well, Peter, here's where everything changed. The deputy never alerted law enforcement my son was in those woods. There was no backup. He was clueless to that fact. He was, you know, he thought the police are just around the corner. They're going to be here like he was told they would be, and they were not. When they got the call, they were on the other side of town. And let me tell you, everything that happened before police ever arrived. And everything started unfolding so fast because what happened was the father-in-law arrived first, and when he pulled in behind this van, Jason's watching this from the woods, and he thinks, oh my God, oh Lord, what's happening? And the father father-in-law gets out, does not own a gun, and he's walking up to the driver's side of this van with a flashlight, and Jason's thinking, oh my God. So he grabbed that double-barrel shotgun, and he come flying out of the woods, and he fired a warning shot so they would not hurt the father-in-law. And then he approached the passenger side of the van, and they started ordering them out. Peter, the two up front was totally cooperative. They got out. Jason was explaining to them, I don't want to hurt you. The police are on their way. I'm just going to bind your hands and feet and wait for the police. That's all we're going to do. Nobody's going to get hurt here. They were totally cooperative, but Jason could still see shadows in the back of that van. He knew there were more. Finally, he talked the third one into coming out, but he came out totally rebellious. Spoke very little English, but the other two was telling this guy, do what he's telling you, do what he's telling you. But he finally agreed. He went over and he laid down on the other side of those two, and Jason was going to come back around and just do the next part of the citizen's arrest, and that's start binding their hands, thinking police was going to be there 5 minutes ago. The father-in-law was standing in front of the rebellious guy with his flashlight on him. Peter, as he goes to tie the first man's hand, he sees the rebellious man getting up. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know if he's going for a gun, a knife, but he knows he's going for the father-in-law. So Jason grabs that gun up and he runs back over to him, and hand nowhere near the trigger, uses it like you would a stick to push him down with, and it fired. They said later that the gun had a hair trigger. It was an old gun. Jason had never shot it, been sitting on a shelf. They said with the slightest brush against the trigger, it could have caused the gun to fire. But it doesn't even matter at this point. The man shot. And so now they call 911 again. And Jason and the 911 operator and the father-in-law start trying to save this guy. Still no police. And when the ambulance never gets there, they get him up because he's bleeding to death, and they put him in the father-in-law's truck where he goes to the hospital. Still no police. The guy dies. The police finally show up. But where everything, if all this nightmare is not bad enough, it gets 10 times worse. Because when the young deputy who gave my son this advice finds out, gets word that it turned so bad, he goes to the judge in the early morning hours before we can even get an attorney and tells the judge, I did meet him down at that house, but he was in a rage over all these all the thefts, and all he wanted to do was kill somebody. I want him charged with felony murder, 3 counts of aggravated assault, possession of a firearm. They charged Jason. They immediately took him and they put him into cell block A with the worst of humanity. And that's where my son was, and before I could even really, or either right after we got in to see him, the next thing we knew was on national news, that same young deputy has gotten the other 2 alleged copper thieves and Fox 5 News back down at that construction site with them telling the world that Jason had executed their cousin. False witnesses did rise up, Peter. Everything started going from bad to worse, and I never could get any help from...
Now, your feelings as a mother here in this, because obviously there's a story here, Psalm 91 is going to become your source of comfort, and eventually I can just look at the cover of this book, it says cleared of all charges. So what's going through your mind at this time when you hear of this? Where are you at?
A mess, a total mess. You know, I kept thinking, Peter, we were Christians. I've been Christian since I was 13 years old, and I just couldn't understand why this was happening, and I kept thinking, somewhere truth's going to emerge. Why is truth not coming out? Why? But see, we were under gag orders, and we couldn't say a word. So my son was being tried now through the courts of public opinion, found guilty and hung, and there was nothing we could do. So I started... I'm going to fix it myself. That's where I went. I'm going to fix this thing. If they're not going to fix it, I'm going to fix it. So I started researching 25 hours a day trying to find an answer. I mean, I started studying case law like you wouldn't believe, but the only thing I was doing was killing myself because I ended up in a hospital bed, getting a blood transfusion, dying. But that's where God had to get me to stop me in my tracks and say, be still and listen to what I'm telling you, Jackie. You're researching the wrong books.
So you had to come to the end of yourself.
You bet I did, and that took some doing. I didn't just jump to the end of self. I would next time, but not this time.
Most of us don't go there
I would
willingly,
just jump right on there next time to save myself a little bit.
Now, you said God gave you a promise in this. Something happened there that God gave you a promise.
Yes, He did.
That He could do something that you couldn't do. And that
He had all the answers. He had the right answers. You know, I immediately got out of the hospital, went to CVS Pharmacy, and my eyes were just drawn to that book stand, Choice Books, and the book just right there, Psalm 91. I took it home, and I started reading about miracle after miracle where God had intervened in people's lives with situations similar to mine where there was no way out, there was no hope. So I literally died to my way of living, and I started having to live life in a new way to survive this, and that way was through hooking up to Psalm 91 for life support, because God was telling me through the book of Psalms, Jackie, I can take the crooked way and I can make it straight. I can take the devices of the wicked and I can make them to non-effect. I can take all these things that man is throwing here and I can reverse it. Man cannot. You know, there comes a time in life, Peter, when money cannot help you. Money could not help us in any way here. Man cannot help you. Man could not help us. And your innocence is not enough. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Well, I found out what you're going to do and where you're going to go.
Yeah.
You're going to go to the rock.
That's right. I mean, I have a quote from your book here. This is the first book, The Bridge. Between cell block A, which is where
my son
murderers were and your son was, and a miracle. And then you say, God doesn't want us to worry or be afraid. As Psalm 23:4 reminds us, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And then you talk about how it depends on where we're looking. So would you say you were walking through the valley, shadow of the valley of death?
The closest I've ever come to it. The closest thing I've ever known to it. Because, I mean, the thoughts that go through your mind that, you know, when you come out of your prayer closet and you're on this high where God is telling you He's going to take everything and He's going to make it right, and you're feeling so good, Peter, to come out and go into a meeting with attorneys where they constantly bring you back down and tell you that your son is not going to be free, Jackie. Listen to what I'm telling you. Take those rose-colored glasses of yours off and listen to what I'm telling you. It's not a matter of whether or not he's going to prison, Jackie. It's a matter of how long he's going for. That's what man was telling me. That's what the best attorneys was telling me, Peter.
Now here's something that stood out in your book. You say, once God reminded me of the following: I created the whole world in 6 days, and on the seventh day I was finished, so I just rested. So do you think this problem with Jason is so enormous that I can't straighten it out?
That's the first time in my life I had to apologize to God. I mean, I've had to go to forgiveness, get forgiveness constantly, but that's the first time. I walked out of my house. It was night. And it was one of those times when my heart was so heavy. And I fell down on our driveway, and with my face to the pavement, I started just crying and begging, please do something, please do something. We're sinking here, do something. And when I got up, this peace just came, and I looked up at the heavens, and all the stars were out, and the moon, and He spoke to me, and He said, Jackie, look at you, look around, look. I created all this, and in 6 days. The seventh I was caught up and arrested, but yet you seem to think that this thing has gotten so out of proportion that I can't fix it. I literally had to go back down to the ground, back with my face to the pavement, and beg for forgiveness for underestimating Him. I mean,
you know that's a word for everybody. That's a good word, whatever you're facing at home today. Is it so big? Is it so big, your problem, that God, who made everything that we see, couldn't straighten it out? Now, I know that, by the way, this is turning into a major motion picture, and I believe this is, I don't know if it's the poster for the movie, but it's called Georgia Justice. Yeah. If we can get a close-up of that there, well, they have one already on the screen. I don't have to hold it up there. And so you expect that to be released in 2012?
Oh, yeah, in the fall of 2012.
Fall of 2012.
Yes.
Now, you get it. I don't want to fast forward, because you need to get this book yourself, and your info has been on the screen there at bridgetoamiracle.com, and all those people have been seeing that. But, you know, in this first book, this is book number 1, and this is the sequel here, I get to about page 111, and it says, charge, felony murder, not guilty, voluntary manslaughter, not guilty, involuntary manslaughter, aggravated assault, etc., and all not guilty. So what in the world happened?
Is that a miracle? Is that a miracle? Is that a miracle from what you just read from the best attorney in the Southeast telling me? It's not a matter of whether or not he's going to prison. It's a matter of how long for. And then my God showed up. But let me tell you, it came down to, I had to sell out 100% to God, and I finally did. But let me tell you when I did, because the Monday morning before we were to go to court for trial to start, guess what the last word from the attorney was to me? Jason, tell your mama when she comes to court on Monday not to bring that Bible. Because if there's a juror up there and they see her Bible, that one opinion alone, if they are a non-believer, that one opinion can send you to prison for 30 years. Now, how's that to be put on a mama right now who's living on Psalm 91 for life support, who can't breathe outside of this, but yet I got to go to court without it. So I just went back into my prayer closet and I said, God, this is no strange thing to you, you know, but here's, I don't know what to do. And he said, well, let me tell you what to do, Jackie. You've been telling everybody you're going to get a miracle. You've been telling everybody your faith's going to be strong enough that I'm going to come through for you. Is it? Is it? And I'm like, yeah, it is. It is. You know what? I'm going to give you 100%. So I went right on through the metal detectors, and I didn't hide it. But do you know something? It was the only thing that sustained me through trial. When I just wanted to scream out at this prosecutor, who, when I looked at him, I saw Satan, who was out to destroy my son's life. I wanted to scream. I would just look down and say, now, God would say, I'm your defense. But not to trust in man. This is going to be fine. But you know what? I needed God to show up 100%, because just what you read, all those charges had subcharges. And any of the subcharges could have sent my son to prison. Peter, the defense attorney picked 6 jurors. The prosecutor picked 6. So don't that tell you right there, when you put 12 people together in a room, you're going to have mixed.
12 opinions, yeah.
You're going to have a problem there.
Yeah.
But no, not for God. Because when they come back in, when that jury came back in, we still didn't know which way this thing was going. That's how close it was. We still did not know. But right there, when that little piece of paper went up there, God walked down the aisle with 110% on every single charge.
Now, I want to get to Psalm 91 here, because Psalm 91 and both of your books here, Psalm 91 is
I got it here too.
Prominently displayed. Talk a little bit about what in this time of trauma and storm, emotions raging inside of you, how did God speak to you through Psalm 91? First of all, let me tell you, I had no clue what Psalm 91 was. I had no clue that it's God's shield of protection on our life. Had I not had the blood transfusion, had God not put me there, had God not put me in CVS getting the medication and drawn my eyes to that book, I had no clue what it was. But when I went home and I started reading Psalm 91, it tells you about how no matter what comes against you in life, if you will move in under the shadow of His wings, hover, it says abide, stay in Him, stay in here, and let Him deal with this instead of you trying to deal with all this. He tells you, if you will stay here under my wings, let me tell you what I'm going to do for you. You don't have to be afraid of the terror by night. You don't have to be afraid of those arrows that come flying at you by day. I will put angels in charge of you, and I will deliver you from whatever trouble there is. All that is displayed right there for us. All we have to do is claim that promise. So so practically now, try to picture back, it's a couple of years have gone since this, you're clinging to these verses.
I'm still clinging. I'm still in it. I'm still in it. Let me tell you how this book came about. I'm not a writer. Never wanted to be a writer. Never inspired to be a writer, and still don't want to be a writer. About 2 months after this trial was over, I was sitting at my desk, and lives, Peter, had started kind of moving forward, except mine. Mine was just still hung up. I couldn't go past this. And I was sitting at my desk one day, and God spoke to me just like He did in that hospital bed. And He said, Jackie, what was the worst part of all that? I said, oh, dear God, that's when Jason was in cell block A. He said, I want you to write it down. I did. He said, what was the best part? I said, oh, dear God, that's when you showed up with that miracle. He said, now write that down. He said, now what was that bridge that joined those two? Really, hell to heaven. I said, that was Psalm 91. He said, now let's start writing. Peter, he started dictating, and I started typing. I said, I felt like his secretary. He was just dictating all this stuff, and I'm writing, and the next thing I know, there is a book out there. And Satan tried to stop that book every way he could from getting published. And every time I'd give up, I would just have this little bit of energy to say, I'll just try one more time, and you go through. All right, after this book came out, a year later, I was walking again. I heard that voice again. I didn't want to hear it again. I don't want to do this. And he said, Jackie, now wait a minute now. The bridge covered that tragedy, that trial, and your triumph. But what about those tears? I said, oh, God, what? I just sit down and it just started flowing again. And this is the mental aspect of what I went through for those 10 months, mentally, physically, emotionally. That is a hard, tough book right there.
So this book is really, and I'll hold it up here, and you don't get all these stickies with it. That's ours here. This is the story of what happened to your son, Jason. And the whole miracle, how he is a free man. And then this is a story that, based out of that deals with the mental, emotional turmoil and the power of Psalm 91.
Spiritual warfare between God and Satan. Yeah, spiritual warfare.
And I just opened up as you were talking. I was listening with both ears, but I was just glancing in something here that we had highlighted in your book. Let me just see if I can find it again here, where you talk about the answer is this: we stand strong in the victory that is already ours through Jesus Christ, and walk in that power. We are in the army of the Lord, and He has already defeated the enemies, the enemy for us. And then it says snares are on every side, but we're still victorious.
We are.
And so this book is written to help people who are going through emotional turmoil, isn't it?
I cannot tell you, after radio interviews, television interviews, how many telephone calls I have received from mothers who have incarcerated children. And all of them's hearts are just like mine, completely broken. And I couldn't understand something. I don't know what to tell them. I didn't know what to tell them. I thought, God, but everything happens for a reason. And let me tell you, when Jason was in cell block A for 9 days before we could get him out of there on bond, he moved his life into Psalms and into the Bible. And he started, the first prisoner come by and said, Jason, what are you reading? He said, I'm reading the gospel. Well, tell me about your Jesus. And he started sharing the gospel with a prisoner. The next day, those two were reading the Bible, and another prisoner comes, and he accepts the Lord. After that third prisoner came by my son's cell block, and Jason had shared the gospel, and they gave their heart to the Lord, they were going to start a prayer meeting in cell block A. That is when Satan himself opened that gate and threw my son out, okay? So that's what I tell mothers. You have incarcerated loved ones, first of all, make sure they know the Lord Jesus Christ. Most of them say they do. And I say, well, then get them a Bible and tell them to get where they need to be with the Lord Jesus Christ and start where they can share that gospel with the other inmates. And I said, that is their meal ticket out. That right there will get them out, because Satan is not going to let them sit in there and bring people to the Lord. So now I know that's why that happened when Jason was in cell block A.
And, you know, it's amazing the stories that come out of prisons, what God is doing for people. And of course, it goes right back to the Bible. You know, there's prison stories in the book of Acts. And so we know God works in prisons. You know, I want to go back to, first of all, let's just cover this right now. Once again, you know, you may want to get this for a special friend. You may want to get it for yourself, most of all. But you may know someone, you say, I know someone who has a child that's incarcerated. And I know someone who has a child that maybe isn't incarcerated, but is in some other trouble.
Yes.
And this is really a mother's story of standing on Psalm 91 and receiving the impossible for your son. I don't think I'm overstating that.
No, it was an impossible situation.
And it's about to be turned into a major motion picture called Georgia Justice. You know, Georgia on My Mind.
Yes,
Georgia
Journey
Justice.
to Faith. That's what it is.
And then this Journey to Faith, and that's the sequel. And so you can go to the website there, and I think I see it there again, bridgetoamiracle.com. Did I get that right?
Yes.
And you can find more information, and also I'm sure there's a way people can connect with you, Jackie. Is that right? I want to go back. We got about 3 minutes to go here. Your story is fantastic, and we hear the mother's heart coming out, but there are people watching right now, and you're just in a similar position. And let me ask you this, Jackie. Can you think of one time when you felt like there's absolutely no hope? This is over.
Well, Satan constantly reminded me or made me think there was no hope. That was his mission, and he did it really, really well. I mean, you know, the morning that I got up to go to trial, I've never been in the courtroom. I didn't know, I almost couldn't get out of bed. I felt totally hopeless. I felt helpless, hopeless. I felt it all, and it was like, you know, Satan already knew what the outcome of this trial was going to be. I'm fully convinced of that. And he knew this is his one last chance to shut me down. And he threw all the power that he had at me that morning. And I mean, it was bad. Oh, yeah, it was so bad. But yet there was still that one little part of me that could still see some light. And it was just, you know, you just had to keep your eye on that little tiny glimmer, you know.
Because Jesus will never leave you nor forsake you. Maybe you heard something like a prophetic word for you. Is your problem so big that it's too enormous for the God who created heaven and earth? Is it so big? I know it looks big to you, Jackie. It looked big to you, and the people watching, you have a problem. It looks enormous. It's invincible. It's impossible. But in the light of who God is it really that big? I want you to reach out your hand right now. Let's believe Jesus together. Father, I thank you right now for your love that's been revealed. I thank you for the story of this mother, Jackie Carpenter, and her faith resting, standing on Psalm 91. And I thank you that people's lives are being lifted right now. In the name of Jesus, receive that which is yours. The devil has been defeated. We're not trying to defeat him. He has been defeated. But we stand, as Jackie said in her book, in the victory that Jesus Christ has already provided for us. I want you to get to your telephone and call the Grace Prayer Center right now. Get these books. Jackie, I'm down to the last 10 seconds. Thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you so
Powerful
much.
story.
Thank you.
And please give our regards to your family. But you keep calling the prayer center and say, if God could help that woman and her family, you say, God can help me too. That's the message today that's sounding clear. God bless you.
You are watching